The night sky above Arizona was clear and filled with stars. Greg Peters adjusted his telescope, sipping coffee to fight off the chill of the desert night. As an amateur astronomer, he spent most clear nights like this, watching the heavens and recording what he saw. Should be a good night for Mars, he mumbled to himself, checking his star chart. The red planet was particularly close this month. Greg pointed his telescope toward Mars and began to focus. Something caught his eye, a small, bright object that shouldn't be there. At first he thought it was a satellite, but its movement didn't match any normal orbit. He quickly took several photos through his telescope. At that same moment, 250 miles above Earth, NASA astronaut Heather Daniels floated toward the observation window of the International Space Station. Her scheduled Earth photography session was about to begin, but something on one of the monitoring screens caught her attention. "Houston, are you seeing these readings?" she asked, pushing herself toward the instrument panel. "What readings, ISS?" came the reply from Mission Control. "We're getting strange radiation spikes. They're coming from somewhere past lunar orbit." Mission Control went quiet for a moment. "Stand by, ISS." Heather looked out the window toward the, dark side of the moon. Nothing visible, but the instruments didn't lie. Something was out there. In Washington, D.C., Dr. Richard Coleman's phone rang at 3:14 a.m. He fumbled in the dark, knocking over a glass of water before finding it. "Coleman," he answered, his voice rough with sleep. "Richard, it's Bill from JPL. You need to see this data. Right now." 20 minutes later, Dr. Coleman sat in his home office staring at his computer screen, fully awake now. The radiation patterns were unlike anything he'd ever seen. They suggested multiple large objects entering the outer solar system, moving at speeds that defied conventional physics. "How many?" he asked. "At least 12 that we can detect," Bill replied. "And they're slowing down, that's the scary part. These aren't natural objects." Dr. Coleman took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "I'll be at the observatory in 30 minutes. Don't share this with anyone else yet." By morning, the situation had escalated. The objects had been confirmed by 3 separate observatories. They were artificial and massive, each one larger than any spacecraft humans had ever built. Most troubling of all, they were spreading out through the solar system in what appeared to be a strategic formation. At the Pentagon, Admiral John Martinez of the United Nations Space Command walked into an emergency meeting. The room was filled with military officers and government officials all talking over each other. He set his coffee down and cleared his throat. The room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, as of 0600 this morning, Earth is under observation by an unknown extraterrestrial force," he said calmly. "These objects entered our solar system approximately 72 hours ago and have now positioned themselves throughout the outer planets. One has just entered the asteroid belt." A murmur ran through the room. "Are they hostile?" asked a general from the back. "Unknown," Martinez replied. "But they made no attempt to communicate before entering our territory, and they're moving with purpose." The door opened and a young lieutenant rushed in, handing the admiral a tablet. He read it quickly, his face darkening. "It appears our visitors have established observation posts near Jupiter and Saturn. They're actively scanning Earth's communications networks." The president's national security advisor stood up. "How long until this goes public?" As if in answer, everyone's phones began to buzz with news alerts. On the wall screen, a news broadcast showed an image, grainy but unmistakable, of an artificial object near Mars. The caption read, "Breaking. Amateur astronomer photographs alien spacecraft." "I guess that answers your question," Martinez said, grimly. Greg Peters had become an overnight sensation. His photos, taken from his backyard observatory, were now on every news channel worldwide. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since he'd posted them online. "I just pointed my telescope at Mars like I always do," he told the reporter outside his house. "And there it was. The shape is clearly artificial. No doubt about it." At the secret Pine Gap facility in Australia, Lieutenant Lisa Bennett studied the images captured by military satellites. Unlike the grainy public photos, these showed clear details of the alien vessels. They were massive, with strange angular projections and glowing energy signatures unlike anything in human engineering. Their propulsion system is beyond anything we've theorized, she said to the room of analysts. And look at these energy readings. Their power generation must be at least 1,000 times more efficient than our best nuclear reactors. One of the analysts looked up from his screen. Lieutenant, they're sending out smaller craft now. They appear to be survey vessels. Track them all, she ordered. I want to know every move they make. Dr. Samantha Patel worked furiously in her laboratory beneath a mountain in Colorado. Few people knew this facility existed, and even fewer knew what she had been developing here for the past 5 years. A theoretical defense system against potential extraterrestrial threats. Alan, are you seeing this? She called to her programmer colleague. Alan Murphy looked up from his computer. The scans? Yeah. Their communication signals are like nothing I've ever seen. No, not that. Look at the pattern. She pointed to a screen showing wavelength analyses. There's a vulnerability here. Their shields flicker when they transmit data. Alan's eyes widened. You're right. That could be something we can use. Across the globe, reactions to the alien presence varied wildly. In New York, people gathered in Times Square, some praying, some partying as if it were the end of the world. In Moscow, military vehicles moved through the streets. In Beijing, authorities urged calm while quietly moving defense systems into place. In the Oval Office, President Kevin Harlow prepared to address the nation. The speechwriters had been working all night, but he kept crossing out lines, rewriting them in his own words. The world is about to change forever, he said to his chief of staff. People deserve the truth, not political fluff. At that moment, on the edge of the asteroid belt, the largest of the alien vessels changed course. It moved deliberately toward Earth, followed by 2 smaller ships. Admiral Martinez received the alert while walking to the UN General Assembly. He paused in the hallway, reading the message twice. They're coming, he said to his aide. Tell the President the visitors are on the move. Estimated arrival at Earth orbit, 36 hours. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if we were alone in the universe. Now, in the silence of space, Earth prepared to receive its answer, and it was approaching. Fast. The world held its breath as the alien ships approached Earth. News channels ran nonstop coverage. Religious leaders called for prayer. Military forces around the globe moved to high alert. President Kevin Harlow stood before the United Nations General Assembly. Representatives from every nation sat in tense silence. We face this moment together, he said, his voice steady, not as separate countries but as one human family. Whatever happens next, we must stand united. As he spoke, screens throughout the chamber suddenly flickered. The president's image disappeared, replaced by something no human had ever seen before. The alien had dark purple skin and 6 yellow eyes arranged in a circle around its head. It wore ornate armor with symbols that seemed to glow from within. People of Earth, it spoke in perfect English, its voice deep and resonant. I am High Commander Zorthal of the Valkyrian Empire. Your world has been noticed. The room erupted, in chaos. The alien continued unperturbed. The location of your solar system is of strategic importance to our expansion. Your planet's resources and position make it valuable to us. Admiral Martinez watched from the back of the room, his face grim. This was exactly what he had feared. The Valkyrian Empire offers you 2 choices, the alien commander continued. Surrender willingly and become a protectorate under our rule, or resist and face immediate destruction. A cold silence fell over the assembly. You have 72 hours to deliver your answer. Choose wisely. The transmission ended abruptly. For several seconds, no one moved or spoke. Then pandemonium broke loose. In a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon, Lieutenant Lisa Bennett reviewed the transmission data with her team. They had captured extensive readings during the alien broadcast. Their ships are even more advanced than we thought, she said, pointing to energy readings on her screen. These weapons signatures suggest they could destroy our major cities in minutes. A young analyst looked up from his computer. But there's something strange here, Lieutenant. The transmission contained way more data than necessary for a simple message. They were scanning us, Lisa realized. While they were talking, they were mapping our defenses. She pulled out her phone and called Admiral Martinez. Miles away in her underground laboratory, Dr. Samantha Patel worked frantically. The alien transmission had given her team valuable data about Valkyrian technology. Her assistant, Alan Murphy, typed rapidly at a computer terminal. Their shields operate on a frequency we can actually interact with, Samantha said excitedly. The modulation pattern is complex but not incomprehensible. Alan nodded without looking up from his screen. I'm running simulations now. If we can create a counter frequency, we might be able to disrupt their shield harmonics. How long to build? A working prototype? She asked. Alan finally looked up, his face serious. With current materials, maybe 50 hours. Samantha's expression fell. That's too long. We only have 72 hours total, and we'd need time to deploy it. Then we need better materials, Alan said simply. At the United Nations, emergency sessions continued. Around the clock. Some nations advocated immediate surrender to save lives. Others insisted humanity should never kneel to invaders. President Harlow met with his Security Council. Admiral Martinez presented the latest intelligence. They have at least 20 major ships in our solar system now, he explained. Their weapons technology is far beyond ours. A direct military confrontation would be suicide. What about Dr. Patel's defense system? Asked the president. Martinez shook his head. It's promising, but not ready. We don't have enough time. The president looked around the table. Then we need a different approach, one that doesn't rely on matching their technology. Colonel Frank Wilson, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. Sir, I may have an idea. It's unconventional, but given our situation, I'm listening, Colonel, the president said. 24 hours later, military bases around the world were buzzing with activity, not preparing for battle, but executing a different kind of plan. Captain Michelle Gray reviewed her mission one last time. As one of Earth's most skilled pilots, she had been chosen to deliver humanity's response to the Valkyrian fleet. The shuttle has been modified according to specifications, her flight engineer told her. We've installed the special communication array Dr. Patel designed. It should be able to penetrate their shields just long enough to deliver the message. Michelle nodded, studying the small craft she would pilot. It looked fragile compared to the massive alien vessels waiting in orbit. And the package? She asked. Secured in the cargo hold, exactly as Colonel Wilson specified. At the United Nations, Admiral Martinez briefed the Security Council on the plan. We can't match their firepower, he explained, but we can make the price of victory too high for them to pay. Back in her lab, Dr. Patel put the finishing touches on a small device. It wasn't the shield disruptor she had hoped to complete. There simply wasn't time. Instead, it was something simpler but potentially just as effective. This will let Captain Gray broadcast directly into their command ship, she explained to Alan. They won't be able to block it or trace it back to us. Will it work? He asked. It has to, she replied. At Cape Canaveral, Captain Michelle Gray climbed into her shuttle. The mission was classified at the highest level. Only a handful of people knew what she carried or what she planned to do. Control, this is Gray. I'm ready for launch, she said into her headset. Understood, Captain. You are go for launch. Godspeed. The shuttle's engines fired, pushing her back into her seat as the craft rose into the sky. Within minutes, she had left Earth's atmosphere and was heading toward the massive Valkyrian vessel hovering in orbit. Valkyrian command ship, this is Earth shuttle requesting permission to approach, she transmitted. I bring Earth's official response to High Commander Zorthal. There was a long pause before a reply came. Earth shuttle, you may approach docking. Bay 4. Any deviation from your course will result in immediate destruction. Understood, Michelle replied, her hands steady on the controls. As her shuttle approached the enormous alien vessel, she activated Dr. Patel's device. Then she opened a channel to deliver humanity's message. High Commander Zorthal, I bring Earth's answer to your ultimatum. On the bridge of his ship, Zorthal watched the tiny human shuttle approach. These primitives were either very brave or very foolish. He was curious to see which. "Transmit your response," he ordered. Instead of surrender documents, his screens filled with technical data. Maps of Earth appeared, with thousands of points marked in red. Zorthal recognized them immediately as nuclear weapons sites. Then came the message that would change everything. "The people of Earth will never surrender." Captain Gray's voice came through clearly. "If you attack, every nuclear weapon on our planet will detonate simultaneously. Our world will become a radioactive wasteland for centuries, and the electromagnetic pulse will severely damage any ships in orbit." Zorthal stared at the screen in disbelief as she continued. "You can have Earth, but not while we're alive to stop you, and if we die, you get nothing but radioactive ruins." High Commander Zorthal's 6 yellow eyes blinked in sequence as he processed the human's message. In his 300 years commanding the Valkyrian expansion fleet, he had never received such a response. Planets typically surrendered immediately, or mounted futile military resistance. But this was different. "Verify their capability," he ordered his science officer. "Can these humans actually do what they claim?" The science officer analyzed the data streaming across his console. "The nuclear weapons exist in the numbers they indicate. And yes, Commander, if detonated simultaneously, they would render the planet unusable for approximately 300 cycles. The electromagnetic pulse would indeed damage our vessels in low orbit." Zorthal stood silently, considering the implications. Then he turned to the communications officer. "Inform the human messenger that we have received their response. They will hear from us before the deadline." In Captain Michelle Gray's shuttle, tension hung in the air. She had delivered humanity's message, and now she waited. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was only minutes. Finally, her communication system activated. "Human vessel, your message is acknowledged. Return to your planet. The Valkyrian Empire will respond within the designated time frame." Michelle released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Understood," she replied simply, then turned her shuttle back toward Earth. As she flew away from the massive alien vessel, she activated her secure channel. "Eagle to nest. Message delivered. They're thinking it over." Admiral Martinez's voice came through. "Good work, Captain. Return to base immediately." Back on Earth, inside the war room beneath the White House, President Harlow and his advisors awaited news. "They didn't destroy her shuttle," Colonel Wilson noted when the report came in. "That's something, at least." The president nodded. "But we've just threatened to destroy our own planet. Will they believe we'd actually do it?" "They need to study our history," Admiral Martinez said grimly. "Then they'll know we're not bluffing." In another part of the complex, Dr. Samantha Patel and Alan Murphy continued working on their shield disruption technology. They had made progress, but time was running short. "If we can just isolate this frequency," Samantha muttered, adjusting settings on her equipment. "Their shields fluctuate in a predictable pattern when they communicate." Alan looked up from his workstation. "What if we don't need to bring down their entire shield? What if we just need to create a small window? Just enough to deliver a targeted strike?" Samantha's eyes widened. "That's it. We don't need to disable everything. Just create a momentary vulnerability at a specific point." She reached for her phone. "I need to talk to Admiral Martinez right away." Meanwhile, aboard the Valkyrian command ship, Intelligence Officer Krelvar had been assigned an unusual task: determine if humans were truly capable of such self-destructive resolve. Krelvar had spent hours studying intercepted human broadcasts, historical records, and literature. The more he learned, the more disturbed he became. "High Commander, I have completed my preliminary assessment of human psychology," he reported, entering Zorthal's private chamber. "And?" the commander asked. "These humans are unlike any species we have encountered," Krelvar began. "They have a concept they call freedom, which they value above their own survival. Throughout their history, there are countless examples of humans choosing death over subjugation." He displayed various historical images on the chamber's view screen: ancient warriors fighting to the death against overwhelming odds, resistance fighters from various wars, and famous last stands. They celebrate these defeats as victories of spirit, Krelvar explained. They teach their young that it is better to die free than live under control. Zorthal studied the images. Are you suggesting they would actually destroy their own world? I believe there is a high probability, Commander. Their threat should be taken seriously. The War Council of the Valkyrian Empire gathered on the flagship to discuss the human response. Unlike the unified front humanity was trying to present, the Valkyrians were divided. They are bluffing, Fleet Marshal Dex On insisted. No species would destroy their own world and everything they have built. We cannot afford to miscalculate, countered strategist Vormal. If they do what they threaten, we lose a valuable strategic position. High Commander Zorthal listened to the debate without comment. Finally, he raised a hand for silence. We'll test their resolve, he decided. Not with a full attack, but with a demonstration of our power. We will destroy one of their orbital satellites and observe their response. Back on Earth, Dr. Patel's team had finally achieved a breakthrough. In a hastily arranged test, they successfully created a small disruption in a simulated Valkyrian shield. It works, Alan exclaimed as the test readings came in. We can create a 2-meter opening for approximately 3.7 seconds. Not much time, Samantha said, but enough to deliver a payload. Lieutenant Lisa Bennett, who had been observing the test, immediately saw the military implications. We could deploy a tactical EMP device through that opening. Not enough to destroy their ships, but enough to disrupt their systems temporarily. I'll inform Admiral Martinez, Samantha said. We need to start production immediately. At the United Nations Space Command Center, Admiral Martinez was in the middle of a briefing when alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. Sir, a technician called out. One of our military satellites just went dark. The European Defense Network is reporting direct energy weapon fire from the Valkyrian fleet. The room fell silent. This was the moment they had feared. Get me the President, Martinez ordered calmly, and prepare to implement Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega was the code name for Earth's nuclear response plan. Once initiated, it would begin the countdown to global detonation. In the Oval Office, President Harlow received the news with a grim expression. The Valkyrians had fired the first shot. Admiral, initiate Protocol Omega Stage 1, he ordered. Make sure they can detect our preparations. Stage 1 was deliberately designed to be observable from space. The movement of nuclear assets, the powering up of launch systems, all sending a clear message to the watching aliens. Yes, Mr. President. And what about Dr. Patel's new weapon? Fast track it. Get it deployed as soon as possible. Across the globe, military forces moved into position. Civilian populations were already in shelters, having been evacuated days earlier when the alien vessels first appeared. In a small reinforced bunker in Colorado, Colonel Frank Wilson addressed a team of elite pilots, including Captain Michelle Gray, who had recently returned from her mission to the Valkyrian ship. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been selected for what may be humanity's most important mission, he began. Thanks to Dr. Patel's breakthrough, we now have a way to strike back. He showed them schematics of small, maneuverable craft equipped with EMP devices and shield disruptors. Your job is to deliver these packages to specific points on the Valkyrian vessels. If we can disrupt their systems even temporarily, it might convince them our threat is real, and we have the means to hurt them. Captain Gray studied the schematics. These are essentially suicide missions, sir. Colonel Wilson didn't flinch. Yes, Captain, they are. That's why I'm only asking for volunteers. Without hesitation, every pilot in the room stepped forward. From his command ship, High Commander Zorthal observed the human response to his test attack. Their reaction was not panic, as he had expected, but a coordinated, deliberate preparation for global destruction. They're actually doing it, Krelvar said quietly. They're preparing to destroy their world rather than surrender. For the first time in his long career, Zorthal felt uncertainty. The Empire had never faced an enemy like this before. The sun rose over a changed Earth. Cities stood empty as people waited in underground shelters. Military bases hummed with activity as final preparations were made. The deadline set by the Valkyrian Empire would expire in just 12 hours. A hardened bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. Captain Michelle Gray and her team of volunteer pilots prepared for their mission. Each of them understood they might not return. The shield disruptors have been installed on all 6 crafts, a technician reported. You'll have one shot at this. The disruptor creates a window in their shields for less than 4 seconds. Michelle nodded, studying the holographic display showing their targets. Key points on the main Valkyrian vessels where their sensors and weapon systems were concentrated. Remember, Colonel Wilson told the pilots, this isn't about destroying their ships. That's impossible with what we're carrying. This is about showing them we can hurt them. One of the younger pilots, Lieutenant Steve Rogers, looked nervous. Sir, what if this just makes them angry? They're already planning to take our planet, Michelle answered before the colonel could. We can't make the situation worse, but we might make them think twice. Aboard the Valkyrian command ship, High Commander Sorthal reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The humans had moved their nuclear weapons into launch position. Their military forces were dispersed in a way that suggested they were genuinely prepared to follow through on their threat. Their deadline response is due in 12 hours, his second-in-command reminded him. The War Council is divided on how to proceed. Sorthal stared at the view screen showing Earth, blue and vulnerable below them. What is your assessment, Krelvar? He asked the intelligence officer. Krelvar had barely slept in days, consumed by his study of human behavior. The more I learn about humans, the more convinced I am they will do exactly as they've threatened. They have a history of choosing death over defeat. No species we've encountered has ever been so irrational, said the second-in-command. Not irrational, Krelvar corrected. They simply value different things than we do. The Valkyrian Empire expands because we seek power and resources. Humans apparently value their autonomy more than life itself. High Commander Sorthal considered this. In Valkyrian culture, willingness to sacrifice everything for a principle was the highest virtue. A virtue they had not expected to find in these seemingly primitive beings. His thoughts were interrupted by an alarm. Commander, multiple small craft have launched from Earth's surface. At the United Nations Space Command, Admiral Martinez watched the mission unfold on large screens. President Harlow stood beside him, his face tense. Captain Gray's team has launched, Martinez reported. ETA to Valkyrian vessels is 7 minutes. And Dr. Patel's device? The president asked. Ready for deployment if this works. If we can disrupt their shields long enough, we can deliver the main EMP payload. He paused. Of course, that would be an act of war. President Harlow's expression was grim. They declared war when they threatened our planet, Admiral. We're just showing them we won't go quietly. Dr. Samantha Patel and Alan Murphy watched the mission from their laboratory, where they continued to refine their technology. The shield disruptors the pilots carried were just the beginning. If this works, Samantha said quietly, we might be able to develop something more powerful. Something that could actually disable their ships completely. Alan looked up from his computer. Let's hope we get the chance. In space, Captain Michelle Gray led her small squadron toward the massive Valkyrian vessels. The alien ships dwarfed their small craft, which had been hastily modified with Dr. Patel's technology. Remember your approach vectors, she told her team over the radio. Stay on course until the last possible moment. The disruptors need to be within 50 meters to work. The small Earth vessels accelerated toward their targets, looking tiny and fragile against the massive alien ships. They've spotted us, Lieutenant Rogers reported. Enemy weapons are powering up. Stay on course, Michelle ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. All that matters is getting close enough to deliver the payload. Aboard the Valkyrian command ship, weapons officers awaited orders to fire. Shall we destroy them, Commander? One asked. Sorthal studied the approaching human vessels with interest. No. Let us see what they're planning. Their craft are too small to pose any real threat. The human ships split up, each targeting a different Valkyrian vessel. They moved, with surprising speed and agility, making them difficult targets. Their pilots show skill, Krelvar observed. These must be their best. Captain Gray's ship approached the lead Valkyrian vessel, dodging energy pulses from defensive weapons. 30 seconds to target, she reported. Disruptor charging. Aboard the Valkyrian ship, sensors suddenly detected an unusual energy signature from the human craft. Commander, they're generating some kind of interference field. Zorthal stood up, suddenly alert. Raise shields to maximum. But the warning came too late. Captain Gray's ship closed to optimal range, and she activated the disruptor. For 3.7 seconds, a small hole appeared in the Valkyrian shield. Through this opening, her ship fired its payload, a specially designed electromagnetic pulse device that attached to the hull of the alien vessel. Similar scenes played out at 5 other points around the Valkyrian fleet as the Earth pilots completed their mission. Payloads delivered, Michelle reported. All units returned to base. The small Earth vessels turned and accelerated away from the alien ships. But the Valkyrians were not about to let them escape so easily. Energy weapons fired, catching 2 of the Earth ships and vaporizing them instantly. Michelle watched in horror as her colleagues disappeared in flashes of light. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered the remaining pilots. Maximum speed. Inside the Valkyrian command ship, alarms blared as systems began to fail. The EMP devices activated, sending pulses of energy through the ship's hulls that disrupted communications, weapons systems, and internal controls. What is happening? Zorthal demanded, as the lights on his bridge flickered. Some kind of electromagnetic attack, his science officer reported. It's disrupting our systems, weapons offline, communications degraded, shield generators functioning at 60% capacity. The attack was far from crippling. The Valkyrian ships were too advanced to be disabled by such relatively primitive technology. But the message was clear. Humans had found a way to hurt them. Back on Earth, Admiral Martinez received reports of the mission's partial success. 4 pilots lost, but 2 returning safely, an officer reported. All 6 EMP devices successfully delivered and activated. And the effect? The president asked. Moderate disruption to their systems, not enough to disable them, but enough to demonstrate our capabilities. President Harlow nodded slowly. They now know 3 things. We're willing to destroy ourselves. Rather than surrender, we can penetrate their shields and we can hurt them. He turned to Admiral Martinez. The question is, will it be enough to make them reconsider? In orbit, Michelle Gray's damaged ship limped back toward Earth. Lieutenant Rogers flew beside her, his ship also showing battle damage. Do you think it worked, Captain? He asked over the radio. Michelle looked back at the Valkyrian fleet where lights flickered on some of the massive vessels. I don't know. But we showed them we're not helpless. She paused. And we showed them we're willing to die for our freedom. On the Valkyrian command ship, systems gradually returned to normal as their advanced technology compensated for the human attack. But the mood had changed. High Commander Zorthal called an emergency meeting of his war council. These humans have surprised us twice now, he said. First with their willingness to destroy their own planet, and now with technology that, while primitive, shows remarkable innovation. Krelvar nodded in agreement. They adapted their weapons specifically to exploit a weakness in our shields that they detected only days ago. Their learning curve is steep. The deadline for Earth's final answer was approaching fast. The Valkyrian Empire had a decision to make, and it was no longer as simple as they had first thought. The final hours of the deadline ticked away. Around the world, people waited in shelters, not knowing if they would see another sunrise. Military forces stood ready to enact Protocol Omega if the order came. It was humanity's darkest hour, but also perhaps its most united. In the White House Situation Room, President Kevin Harlow and his advisors watched the clock. They had made their position clear. Now they waited for the Valkyrian response. 1 hour remaining, Admiral Martinez announced. Quietly, the president nodded. Any movement from their fleet? None, sir. Their ships maintain position. No additional weapons have been activated since our strike. Dr. Samantha Patel entered the room, looking exhausted but determined. Mr. President, we've continued improving. Our shield disruption technology, If we need to launch another strike, we can create larger openings in their defenses. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, the president replied. Aboard the Valkyrian command ship, High Commander Zorthal faced a decision unlike any in his career. The War Council remained divided. Some advocated for immediate attack, arguing that the humans could not possibly destroy their entire planet. Others urged caution, impressed by the humans' resolve and ingenuity. The humans have earned our respect, Krelvar argued. In 3,000 years of conquest, we have never encountered a species willing to die rather than submit. Fleet Marshal Dexon disagreed. Respect? They are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Yet they found a way to penetrate our shields, Zorthal pointed out. Imagine what they might achieve in 100 years. The commander paced the bridge, considering options. The Valkyrian Empire had not become the dominant force in the galaxy by being reckless. They conquered when victory was certain and avoided battles that might prove costly. There is another option, Zorthal said finally. One that honors both, their resolve and our interests. His officers looked at him with surprise. I will meet with their leaders, he announced. Face to face. The message from the Valkyrian fleet came with just 30 minutes remaining on the deadline. It was not what anyone expected. They want to meet? President Harlow asked in disbelief. Admiral Martinez nodded. High Commander Zorthal has requested a direct meeting with Earth's leadership at a neutral location of our choosing. It's a trap, Colonel Wilson said immediately. Perhaps, the Admiral replied, but they've offered to come with minimal security as a show of good faith. The President considered this development. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. Let's hear what they have to say. 24 hours later, in a heavily guarded facility in Geneva, preparations were complete. Security teams had swept the building multiple times. Snipers positioned on nearby rooftops. World leaders gathered in the main conference room, tense but hopeful. A small Valkyrian shuttle landed on the designated pad. True to his word, High Commander Zorthal emerged with only 2 officers, Krelvar and a security guard. President Harlow greeted the alien commander formally. Up close, the Valkyrian was even more imposing, nearly 7 feet tall with ornate armor that seemed to shift colors in the light. Commander Zorthal, welcome to Earth, the president said. President Harlow, the alien replied with a slight bow of his head. I appreciate your willingness to meet. They moved to the conference room where leaders from major nations waited. Captain Michelle Gray, still recovering from her mission, stood near the back of the room. She had been invited as a representative of those who had risked everything. High Commander Zorthal took his place at the table. His 6 yellow eyes scanned the assembled humans. In the Valkyrian Empire's 3,000-year history, he began, we have conquered hundreds of worlds. Some resisted with military force. Most surrendered when they saw our power. None has ever done what you did. The room was silent as he continued. Your warning, that you would destroy your own world rather than be conquered. We believed this to be a bluff at first. But we have studied your history. Your people have repeatedly chosen death over subjugation. He gestured to Krelvar. My intelligence officer has become quite an expert on human history. The ancient Spartans at Thermopylae, the defenders of the Alamo, the resistance fighters in your world wars. Time and again, humans have demonstrated the willingness to die for freedom. President Harlow nodded. Freedom is our highest value, Commander. We will fight for it to our last breath. This is not understood by all species, Zorthal replied, but it is understood by Valkyrians. In our culture, such resolve is considered the highest virtue. His next word surprised everyone. I am here to offer Earth not conquest, but alliance. Murmurs spread through the room. Alliance? Admiral Martinez asked skeptically. The Valkyrian Empire values strength and courage above all else, Zorthal explained. You have demonstrated both. Your position remains strategically valuable to us, but we now see greater value in having humans as allies rather than subjects. He stood and activated a holographic display showing a galactic map. Under our proposal, Earth would remain autonomous, In exchange for access to certain limited resources and strategic positioning rights, we would provide technological assistance. We would also invite human warriors to join our elite forces. President Harlow studied the alien carefully. You want our soldiers? Why? Zorthal's expression was difficult to read, but his voice carried something like admiration. Because your kind fights with a ferocity and determination we rarely see. There are conflicts in the galaxy where such qualities would be useful. Negotiations continued for days. Earth's leaders drove a hard bargain, ensuring their planet's independence while gaining access to interstellar technology. The final agreement granted humans the right to establish colonies on nearby uninhabited worlds and guaranteed Earth's sovereignty. 6 months later, astronaut Heather Daniels stood on the bridge of the Defiance, Earth's first interstellar vessel. Built with Valkyrian technology but crewed entirely by humans, it represented humanity's first step into the wider galaxy. Beside her stood a Valkyrian officer, one of several advisors helping the humans learn to operate their new ship. Your people adapt quickly, the Valkyrian noted as Heather expertly manipulated the ship's controls. Heather nodded. We've waited centuries to reach the stars. We're not going to waste the opportunity. The Valkyrian seemed hesitant, then asked a question that had been puzzling many in the Empire. There is something I do not understand. Why were your people so ready to destroy everything rather than submit? What makes freedom worth such a price? Heather paused, considering how to explain something so fundamental to human nature. Because we'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees, she said simply. That's what makes us human. The ship accelerated toward the edge of the solar system, carrying humanity's spirit out into the stars. Earth had faced its greatest threat and emerged not just surviving but with a new place in the galaxy. The Valkyrian Empire had set its sights on Earth and received one warning in return, a warning that had earned not their enmity, but their respect, and in the vastness of space that might make all the difference. The stars looked different from this part of space. Captain Eleanor Wright pressed her hand against the view screen of the Earth exploration vessel, Horizon, and took a deep breath. After 3 weeks of travel using Earth's new faster-than-light drive, they had arrived at the coordinates sent by the Galactic Federation. Any sign of them? Eleanor asked, turning to her communications specialist. Lisa Martinez shook her head, her fingers moving quickly across her control panel. Nothing yet, Captain, but we're exactly where they told us to be. Daniel Green, the ship's science officer, looked up from his station. Captain, I'm detecting an energy signature unlike anything in our database. Something big is coming. The Askian bridge crew fell silent as a massive ship appeared seemingly out of nowhere. It dwarfed the horizon, its silver hull reflecting the light of a nearby star. Intricate patterns covered its surface, glowing with a soft blue light. Incoming transmission, Lisa announced, her voice steady despite the tension. On screen, Eleanor ordered, straightening her uniform jacket. The view screen flickered and an alien face appeared. It had pale blue skin, large oval eyes, and no visible nose or mouth. When it spoke, the words came through the ship's translator. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Skilax of the Loraxian people, representing the Galactic Federation. We welcome you to the greater community of spacefaring civilizations. Eleanor stepped forward. Thank you, Ambassador. I am Captain Eleanor Wright of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon. We are honored to make first contact with the Federation. The Kia ambassador tilted its head. We have prepared docking procedures for your vessel. My assistants will transmit the necessary information. We look forward to meeting in person. After the transmission ended, Daniel approached Eleanor. That went well, I think. Hard to read alien body language. Eleanor nodded. Let's prepare for docking. Lisa, make sure our translation devices are working perfectly. Daniel, run final checks on the atmospheric compatibility. This is history in the making, people. Let's not mess it up. 6 hours later, Eleanor led her small delegation through the airlock and onto the Federation ship. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon, and the gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's. Ambassador Skilax waited with several other aliens of different species. Welcome aboard, the ambassador said, making a gesture that the humans' cultural briefing identified as a greeting. However, Eleanor noticed that the ambassador maintained an unusual distance from them. "Thank you for your hospitality," Eleanor replied, mimicking the gesture. As they walked through the corridors of the massive ship, Eleanor observed more strange behavior. The alien crew members they passed would press themselves against the walls, giving the humans a wide berth. Some even changed direction entirely upon seeing them. Lisa leaned close to Eleanor. "Are we that ugly?" she whispered. "Maybe we smell bad to them," Daniel suggested quietly. They entered a large chamber with a round table. The Federation representatives sat on one side, leaving empty seats between each person. The humans were directed to sit opposite them. "We have reviewed your species information package," Ambassador Skillax began. "Earth appears to be a fascinating world with rich biodiversity. We're eager to learn about other worlds in the Federation," Eleanor said. "Our people have dreamed of this moment for centuries." The conversation continued, covering basic information about the Federation's structure, member species, and shared technologies. Eleanor noticed that despite the formal politeness, the aliens seemed nervous. Ambassador Skillax's skin changed to a lighter shade whenever the humans moved suddenly. "We would like to offer Earth provisional membership in the Federation," the ambassador announced, surprising Eleanor. "That's very generous," she replied carefully. "We expected a longer evaluation period. Your species has demonstrated the necessary technological advancement and peaceful intentions," Skillax said. "We see no reason for delay." Daniel gave Eleanor a concerned look. This was moving too quickly, and they both knew it. "We appreciate the offer," Eleanor said, "but we would need to consult with our government before accepting." "Of course," the ambassador replied. "We understand your protocols." As they discussed the details of potential membership, the door to the chamber slid open. Several heavily armed guards entered, surrounding a floating containment unit. Through its semi-transparent walls, Eleanor could see a dark, shifting form inside. The shape seemed to flatten against the far side of the container, as far from the humans as possible. "What is that?" Daniel asked, stepping closer to get a better look. The reaction was immediate. Every alien in the room tensed, and Ambassador Skillax rose quickly. "Please step back from the containment unit," the ambassador said, a new urgency in its voice. Eleanor placed a restraining hand on Daniel's arm. "I apologize for my officer's curiosity. Is this creature dangerous?" The ambassador's skin pulsed with changing colors. "It is merely a specimen being transported to another facility. Nothing that concerns your delegation." The guards quickly moved the containment unit out of the room. Eleanor noticed that the dark shape inside seemed to press itself even harder against the wall as it passed near the humans. "Let us continue our discussion," Ambassador Skillax said, changing the subject. Throughout the remainder of the meeting, the Federation representatives refused to speak about the mysterious creature, despite several subtle attempts by the Earth delegation to bring it up again. Later, as they returned to the horizon, Eleanor gathered her team in the ship's conference room. "Thoughts?" she asked. "They're hiding something," Lisa said immediately. "The way they reacted when Daniel approached that container? Pure fear." Daniel nodded. "And did you notice how that thing inside seemed to be avoiding us? It was pressed against the far wall, as far from us as it could get. The membership offer is too good to be true," Eleanor added. "Favorable trade terms, technology sharing, minimal restrictions. Why are they so eager to bring us into the fold?" "Maybe they really like us," Lisa suggested with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Or maybe they need us for something," Daniel countered. "Something connected to whatever was in that container." Eleanor looked out the viewport at the massive Federation ship. "We're missing a big piece of the puzzle here. I want you both to keep your eyes and ears open. Be polite, be diplomatic, but gather every scrap of information you can." "What about the membership offer?" Lisa asked. "We'll recommend a 6-month probationary period," Eleanor decided. "That gives us time to learn more before making any permanent commitments." As they continued talking, none of them noticed the small shadow that briefly flickered across the viewport, only to dart away when it came near the ship's hull. as if the very presence of the humans inside was somehow painful to it. 6 months had passed since Earth accepted provisional membership in the Galactic Federation. The Horizon remained docked at the massive Federation hub station, serving as both embassy and research center for the growing number of human representatives. Daniel Green sat alone in the Federation library, his eyes burning from hours of staring at alien text. As science officer, he had been granted limited access to the Federation's central database. Most of his searches led to dead ends or heavily censored files, but today was different. Cross-reference complete, the computer announced in its soft voice. Daniel leaned forward, scanning the results. He had been searching for information about the strange creature they had glimpsed during their first meeting. By combining search terms about containment protocols, guard requirements, and species that avoided human proximity, he had finally found something useful. The screen displayed information about a species called voidwalkers. The file was mostly classified, but the image matched what Daniel had seen. A dark, shifting form that seemed more shadow than substance. The visible text described them as ancient predators and consciousness feeders. Daniel downloaded what little information he could access and hurried back to the human quarters. He found Captain Wright in her office, reviewing trade agreements. "Captain, I found something," he said, slightly out of breath. Eleanor looked up from her work. "Close the door." Daniel did so, then transferred his findings to her screen. "They're called voidwalkers. From what I can piece together, they're some kind of predator that feeds on consciousness itself." Eleanor frowned as she read. "Consciousness feeders, what does that mean?" "I think they somehow consume the mind while leaving the body intact," Daniel explained. "There are references to victims being left in vegetative states. And according to this, they're nearly impossible to detect or contain," Eleanor noted. "So why keep one on a diplomatic vessel? That seems unnecessarily risky." Daniel hesitated. "There's one more thing. I found a research summary that mentions human neurological patterns causing extreme distress reactions in voidwalker specimens." Eleanor looked up sharply. "They hurt them? We hurt them somehow?" "It seems that way. But most of the research is classified beyond my access level." Eleanor leaned back in her chair. "So we have a dangerous predator that's afraid of humans. And, coincidentally, the Federation offers us membership with unprecedented speed and favorable terms. They didn't choose us for our charming personalities, did they?" Daniel said with a grim smile. "We need to confront Ambassador Skillax," Eleanor decided. "Directly, with what we know." 3 hours later, they sat across from the ambassador in a private meeting room. Lisa Martinez joined them, ready to analyze the ambassador's responses. "Ambassador," Eleanor began, "we've enjoyed these months of cultural exchange, but I think it's time we discuss the real reason Earth was invited to join the Federation." Skillax's skin rippled with color changes. "I'm not sure I understand." "Captain." Eleanor placed a data pad on the table. "We know about the Voidwalkers, and we know they react negatively to human presence." The room went silent. The ambassador's colors stabilized into a deep purple, a sign of distress according to their cultural briefings. "How did you access this information?" Skillax finally asked. "That's not important," Eleanor replied. "What matters is that you've been hiding crucial information from us. We deserve to know the truth." The ambassador's large eyes blinked slowly. "Very well. But this conversation must remain confidential." Skillax touched a control panel, and the room's privacy shields activated. "The Voidwalkers have been the Federation's greatest threat for over 3,000 years. They exist partially in our dimension and partially in another. They feed on consciousness itself, leaving empty shells behind." "And they're afraid of humans?" Daniel asked. "Not afraid. In pain," Skillax corrected. "Your species emits a unique, neurological signature that causes them extreme distress. When our scientists discovered this by accident during an encounter with Earth traders in a border system, we immediately recognized the potential." "So you fast-tracked our membership because we're useful?" Eleanor said flatly. "Because you're salvation," the ambassador countered. Our containment methods fail regularly. We lose thousands of lives each cycle to Voidwalker attacks, but they won't go near humans. For the first time, we have a true defense. Before Eleanor could respond, Lisa's communicator beeped urgently. She checked the message and paled. "Captain, there's an emergency transmission from Federation Outpost 7, she said. They're requesting immediate assistance. Eleanor turned to the ambassador. "What's happening?" "Outpost 7 is one of our research facilities," Skillax said, already moving toward the door. "They study Voidwalker containment methods." They rushed to the command center, where a distorted transmission played on the main screen. A human woman in a Federation security uniform appeared, her face tense with fear. "This is Security Chief Olivia Pearson at Outpost 7, she said, her voice breaking up. "We have multiple containment failures. Systems are malfunctioning station-wide. Crew members are acting strangely. I suspect Voidwalker infiltration, requesting immediate evac." The transmission cut out abruptly. "Olivia is one of our people assigned to the outpost as part of the exchange program," Lisa explained to Eleanor. Ambassador Skillax turned to them, no longer bothering to hide the fear in its posture. Outpost 7 was housing 17 captured. Voidwalkers for study, if they've all escaped. "How many people are stationed there?" Eleanor asked. 235, Skillax replied, including 3 humans. Eleanor didn't hesitate. "The horizon can reach them faster than your larger vessels. We'll launch immediately." "Captain, I must warn you," the ambassador said. "While Voidwalkers cannot approach humans directly, they can still affect the environment around you. They can cause system failures, structural damage." "We understand the risks," Eleanor interrupted. "But we can't leave our people there, or yours." As they hurried back to the horizon, Daniel pulled Eleanor aside. "There's something the ambassador isn't telling us. In the fragments I found, there were references to Voidwalkers being able to replicate under certain conditions." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Then we'd better hurry. Lisa, contact Earth Command, tell them we need more human personnel out here, as many as they can send. And find me everything we have on broadcasting human neural patterns." "Broadcasting?" Lisa asked. "You mean like a signal?" "If our brains hurt these things, maybe we can weaponize that effect," Eleanor explained. "Create safe zones even where humans aren't physically present." As the horizon prepared for emergency departure, a shadow briefly flickered across the docking bay, retreating quickly as the human crew boarded their ship. Nobody noticed it slip aboard a cargo vessel bound for the central worlds of the Federation. The hunt had begun. The horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder. Ahead, Outpost 7 hung in space, its normally bright lights flickering erratically. No response came to their repeated hails. "Life signs?" Eleanor asked, gripping the edge of her command chair. Daniel checked his scanner. "Difficult to get clear readings. The station's power fluctuations are interfering with our sensors. But I'm detecting multiple life forms." "Any sign of the Voidwalkers?" Lisa asked from her communication station. "How do you detect living shadows?" Daniel replied grimly. "According to the data the ambassador shared, standard scanners can't pick them up reliably." Eleanor turned to the newest member of their team. Combat Specialist Jason Rodriguez stood at the tactical station, his expression focused. The former military officer had been assigned to the horizon just before their emergency departure. "Rodriguez, what's your assessment?" Eleanor asked. "We need to board with a small team," he said without hesitation. "If humans repel these creatures, we should lead with our advantage. I suggest a 4-person team, you, me, Green, and Martinez." Eleanor nodded. "Agreed. We'll dock at the emergency airlock. Lisa, keep trying to reach Chief Pearson. Let's move." 20 minutes later, the team stepped through the airlock into Outpost 7. The corridor before them was dimly lit by emergency lighting. The air felt strangely cold. "Stay together," Rodriguez advised, checking his scanner. "According to the station layout, the command center is 2 levels up." They moved carefully through the silent corridors. Twice they passed crew members sitting motionless against walls, eyes open but vacant. Daniel checked one, a male alien with scaled skin. "He's alive," Daniel confirmed. Breathing, heartbeat normal. But there's minimal brain activity. Just like the reports described, the Voidwalkers feed on consciousness. As they continued, Eleanor noticed something strange. The shadows. They're moving away from us. She was right. The darkness in corners and doorways seemed to retreat as they approached, flowing away like liquid. They can sense us, Rodriguez said. They don't like what we're broadcasting. They reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. Suddenly, the lights ahead went out completely. They're trying to use the darkness, Rodriguez said. Stay close. As they moved forward, Lisa's scanner beeped. I'm picking up a human life sign 30 meters ahead in what looks like a security office. They hurried forward, the darkness seeming to part reluctantly before them. The security office door was jammed. Rodriguez forced it open and they found Olivia Pearson inside, a makeshift barricade of furniture pushed against the door. She looked up, her face showing relief mixed with exhaustion. Captain Wright? Thank God you came. Are you injured? Eleanor asked as Daniel checked her over. No, just exhausted. I've been awake for almost 40 hours. Olivia pushed herself to her feet. They can't come near me, but they cut the power, jammed the communications. They're smarter than the Federation believes. How many other survivors? Rodriguez asked. The other 2 humans on staff are in the medical bay, 3 levels down. They were treating injured personnel when the outbreak happened. As for the aliens, her voice trailed off. Most are like empty shells now. Some are still hiding in secured areas. Eleanor helped her up. We need to reach the command center, restore power and communications. It won't be that simple, Olivia warned. These aren't just escaped specimens. Something changed them. They're coordinating, working together. I watched them through the security feeds before they cut the power. They left the office, now a team of 5. The shadows seemed to retreat further with another human present. I have a theory, Rodriguez said as they moved toward the central lift shaft. If they can't stand being near us, maybe we can use that. Create some kind of human proximity weapon. Daniel looked thoughtful. The ambassador mentioned our neurological signature causes them pain. If we could broadcast that signature somehow, like a repellent, Lisa added, or a weapon. They reached the command center to find it in disarray. Several alien crew members lay motionless at their stations. Rodriguez secured the room while Daniel went straight to the main systems. Power core is still functioning, but they've severed the connections to critical systems, Daniel reported. I can reroute emergency power to get basic functions online. While Daniel worked, Eleanor and Lisa checked the station's logs. The last entries painted a disturbing picture. According to this, they were transporting a captured Voidwalker for intensive study, Eleanor said. Something about anomalous behavior patterns. Lisa pulled up another file. Here, a research note from the lead scientist. They discovered this specimen could divide itself when exposed to certain energy frequencies. They were trying to understand the reproduction mechanism. And instead, they triggered it, Olivia said bitterly. Classic Federation overconfidence. They always think they can control what they don't understand. The lights suddenly came back on as Daniel restored power. Got it. Basic systems online, including internal sensors. The sensor display showed dark areas moving throughout the station, flowing around sections where the humans were located. There are dozens of them now, Eleanor said, watching the movements. Maybe hundreds. Rodriguez studied the display. They're concentrated around the power core and life support systems. They're trying to force us out. Or kill everyone on board, Olivia added. Daniel called them over to a workstation. I've been reviewing the research data they collected. The Voidwalkers are sensitive to specific brainwave patterns that humans naturally produce. It's something about our emotional responses, being more chaotic and unpredictable than other species. Can we use that? Eleanor asked. Maybe. Daniel pulled up a schematic of the station. If we could connect to the station's communication system, we might be able to broadcast amplified human neural patterns throughout the entire facility. Rodriguez nodded. A neural flashbang. I like it. They worked quickly. fashioning a makeshift device using components from the command center and medical sensors calibrated to human neural patterns. Daniel configured it to connect to the station's announcement system. "It's ready," he finally said, "but I don't know exactly what will happen. This hasn't been tested." "We're out of options," Eleanor decided. "The Federation rescue ships are still hours away and life support is failing in multiple sections. Do it." Daniel activated the device. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the shadows throughout the station began to thrash violently, pulling away from corridors and rooms, condensing into writhing masses in the outer sections. "It's working," Lisa exclaimed, watching the sensor display. "They're retreating." "Not retreating," Rodriguez corrected, his eyes on the external sensors. "They're leaving the station entirely. Look." Through the command center viewport, they could see dark shapes streaming out through small ruptures in the station's outer hull, flowing into space like ink in water. "They're escaping," Olivia said quietly. Eleanor watched the exodus with growing concern. And now they know exactly what hurts them and how to avoid it. As the last of the Voidwalkers fled the station, the team began rescue operations for the remaining crew. But Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a victory. This was just the beginning of a much larger problem. 2 weeks after the incident at Outpost 7, the Federation Council called an emergency meeting. Reports of Voidwalker attacks had come in from 12 different systems. The creatures were no longer hiding in the shadows. They were hunting openly, leaving behind empty shells that once were thinking beings. Eleanor Wright stood before the council, which consisted of representatives from the Federation's oldest species. Ambassador Skillax sat among them, skin shifting between worried colors. "The containment strategy has failed," Eleanor said plainly. "The Voidwalkers are spreading faster than your ships can respond. We need to try something new." A tall, insect-like council member clicked its mandibles in disagreement. "Humans have been in our space for less than a year. You presume to tell us how to handle a threat we've managed for millennia?" "Managed?" Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "From what I understand, you've been losing this fight in slow motion for centuries. The only thing that's changed is now the Voidwalkers are moving faster, working together." "Because of your interference at Outpost 7, accused another council member, a floating gas-filled being contained in a transparent suit. Ambassador Skillax raised a hand. "Captain Wright's team saved many lives at the outpost, and their discovery about broadcasting human neural patterns could be the key to a more permanent solution." On a screen behind Eleanor, Daniel Green appeared. He was aboard the Horizon, where he had been working with Dr. Amy Nichols, Earth's leading neurobiologist who had arrived with the second wave of human ships. "We've made progress understanding why Voidwalkers react to humans," Daniel explained. "Dr. Nichols, please share your findings." The screen split to show a woman with short gray hair and intense eyes. "Thank you, Officer Green. Council members, our research shows that human brains produce emotional patterns that are fundamentally different from other sentient species. Where your neural patterns follow predictable, orderly sequences, human emotions create chaotic, unpredictable patterns." "And this chaos hurts the Voidwalkers?" asked a council member. "Yes," Amy confirmed. "They feed on consciousness, ordered, predictable consciousness. Human patterns are like static interference that disrupts their feeding process, causing them physical pain." Eleanor stepped forward again. "We've developed a prototype device that can amplify and broadcast these patterns. Early tests show it creates a zone where Voidwalkers cannot enter without experiencing extreme distress." "A weapon," the insect-like council member stated. "A shield," Eleanor corrected. "One that doesn't kill, but repels." Ambassador Skillax's colors shifted to a thoughtful blue. "How large an area can this device protect?" "Currently, about the size of a small outpost," Daniel replied. "But with Federation technology and resources, we believe we could create a network of broadcasters that could protect entire planets." The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices and sounds. Some members argued for sticking with traditional containment methods. Others demanded immediate production of the human devices. Eleanor waited for the noise to die down. There's something else you should know. Lisa Martinez and Jason Rodriguez have been analyzing Voidwalker movement patterns across affected systems. Lisa? The screen changed to show Lisa at her station on the horizon. The attacks appear random at first glance, but they're not. The Voidwalkers are systematically targeting facilities with specific technology, particularly long-range communication arrays and defense systems. They're softening targets, Rodriguez added, joining Lisa on screen. Preparing for something bigger. The council chamber went silent. Preparing for what? Ambassador Skillax finally asked. We believe they're creating conditions for a larger-scale invasion, Eleanor said. By disrupting communications between systems, they can isolate and overwhelm planets one by one. The floating council member drifted closer. This is speculation. Voidwalkers are predators, not strategists. They're evolving, Eleanor insisted. The specimen studied at Outpost 7 showed signs of increased intelligence, and now they're coordinating attacks across multiple systems. We need to act now, while we still can. After hours of debate, the council remained divided. Half wanted to deploy the human solution immediately. The others insisted on more testing, more safeguards. Eleanor left the chamber frustrated. Ambassador Skillax followed her into the corridor. They fear change, the ambassador explained. For thousands of years, the council has managed the Voidwalker threat through containment and isolation. Your approach is too different, too sudden. We don't have time for their caution, Eleanor replied. Every day means more victims. I agree, Skillax said, surprising her. Which is why I've arranged for your team to have access to our primary research facility on Lorix Prime. Dr. Nichols can work directly with our scientists to refine your broadcasting technology. Eleanor studied the ambassador. Why help us go around the council? Because I've seen the projections. At the current rate of Voidwalker expansion, 37 Federation worlds will be compromised within 2 months, including my homeworld. Skillax's skin darkened. The council will come around, but we cannot wait for them. On Lorix Prime, Dr. Nichols worked with the Federation's top scientists to improve the neural pattern broadcaster. Daniel discovered that certain human emotional states produced stronger repelling effects than others. Joy and fear seem to generate the most chaotic patterns, he explained to Eleanor during a video call. Particularly strong emotional memories amplify the effect considerably. So happy or scared humans are more effective against Voidwalkers? Eleanor asked. Essentially, yes. The more emotionally energetic, the better. While the research progressed, reports of new attacks continued to arrive. Federation defense forces were stretched thin, responding to distress calls across dozens of systems. Then came the news they had been dreading. The Federation's most secure Voidwalker containment facility, located on a moon in the Krell system, had been breached. Not from the outside, but from within. The specimens inside somehow coordinated, Rodriguez explained during an emergency briefing. They merged into a single entity powerful enough to break through 5 layers of containment shielding. How? Many escaped? Eleanor asked, dreading the answer. All of them. Nearly 300 specimens, including some of the oldest and largest ever captured. Olivia Pearson, now assigned permanently to the Horizon as Deputy Security Chief, pulled up the facility's final transmission. They recorded this just before communications went down. The video showed security feeds from throughout the facility. Dark shapes flowed through corridors, merging and separating as they moved. Unlike the frantic escaping shadows they had seen at Outpost 7, these moved with purpose, with strategy. They're not just working together, Olivia said quietly. They're becoming something new. The final image showed a massive shadow rising up, almost taking a humanoid shape for a moment before the feed cut out. The room fell silent until Daniel spoke. They're adapting to fight us, learning to organize in ways that make them stronger. Eleanor turned to Ambassador Skillax, who had joined them via holographic projection. We're out of time. The Council needs to approve full deployment of our solution now. The Council is in emergency session, the ambassador replied. but many members have fled to their homeworlds. Fear is spreading faster than reason. Eleanor made her decision. Then we'll have to act without them. Dr. Nichols, how soon can your team have a network of broadcasters ready? The prototypes are already being produced. With Federation manufacturing capabilities, we could have enough units to protect key systems within 2 weeks. Make it 1 week, Eleanor said, and prioritize the systems closest to Earth. If we can't save the whole Federation yet, we'll create a defensive perimeter and work outward from there. As the meeting ended, Daniel pulled Eleanor aside. There's something else you should know. The research team discovered that prolonged exposure to amplified human neural patterns doesn't just repel voidwalkers, it can destroy them completely. Eleanor considered this information. So our defensive shield is also a weapon? Potentially, yes. But to be effective, we'd need to concentrate the broadcast at much higher levels. It would require dozens of humans working together, focusing their emotional patterns. A task force, Eleanor said, the plan already forming in her mind. Human volunteers specifically trained to generate the strongest possible emotional patterns. I've already spoken with Rodriguez about it, Daniel admitted. He's calling it Project Lighthouse, humans standing together to push back the darkness. Eleanor looked at the star map showing the spreading Voidwalker attacks. Tell him to start recruiting. We're going to need every willing human we can find. Meanwhile, at the edge of Federation space, a cargo ship drifted silently, all life aboard extinguished. Within its dark corridors, shadows pooled and whispered, learning, growing, preparing. Among them moved a larger presence, the merged consciousness of hundreds of Voidwalkers driven by a single purpose, survival. And to survive, they would need to eliminate the only threat they had ever known, humans. 1 month later, humanity stood at the center of the greatest crisis the Federation had faced in millennia. Earth ships had arrived in waves, bringing thousands of human volunteers. They spread throughout key systems, establishing neural broadcasting, stations that created safe zones where Voidwalkers could not enter. Eleanor Wright stood on the bridge of the horizon, which had been upgraded with Federation technology. The view screen showed the massive fleet gathered around the Federation Central hub, a mix of Earth vessels and ships from the remaining loyal Federation members. Status report, she said, looking at her expanded bridge crew. All neural broadcasters are online and functioning, Lisa Martinez replied from her station. We've created a defensive perimeter covering 17 key systems, including Earth. Daniel Green looked up from his science console. The Voidwalkers are avoiding our protected zones, but they've increased attacks on outlying systems. Federation intelligence estimates they've compromised 36 worlds already. The Council is ready for your address, Captain. Olivia Pearson said, now serving as Eleanor's second-in-command. Eleanor nodded. Put them through. The view screen changed to show the Federation Council chamber. Only half the seats were filled. Many Council members remained on their homeworlds, coordinating defense efforts. Ambassadors Killax presided over the emergency session. Captain Wright, the ambassador began. The Council has reviewed your proposal for Operation Lighthouse. There are concerns. Eleanor had expected this. With respect, Ambassador, we've moved beyond the time for concerns. Our intelligence has confirmed that the Voidwalkers are gathering near the Maris system. The ancient nesting grounds, a council member murmured. Yes, Eleanor confirmed. Dr. Nichols believes they're returning to their point of origin, pooling their resources and consciousness. The screen split to show Dr. Nichols in her laboratory. Our research suggests that Voidwalkers originated in a region of space where our dimension and others overlap. This creates unique energy conditions that allowed them to evolve their partial phase-shifting abilities. And you propose to attack them there? Asked a skeptical council member. At the source of their power. Not attack, Eleanor corrected. Contain. Permanently. Dr. Nichols and her team have developed an enhanced neural broadcaster that can generate a field large enough to cover the entire nesting region. But this would require... Ambassadors Killax began. Human volunteers, yes, Eleanor finished. 123 of us to be precise, working together to generate the emotional patterns needed to power the device. The council erupted in debate. Eleanor waited patiently until Ambassador Skillax restored order. Even if this works, the ambassador said, you would be trapping yourselves with the very creatures that wish to destroy your kind. The risk is unacceptable. The risk has been explained to all volunteers, Eleanor replied. We know what we're doing. After more debate, the council reluctantly approved the mission. They had run out of alternatives. 2 days later, the Horizon led a fleet of 7 ships toward the Maris system. Within the lead ship's specially modified central chamber, 123 humans prepared for the most important task of their lives. Eleanor moved among them, offering encouragement. Jason Rodriguez supervised the final connections to the massive neural broadcasting array built into the ship's core. The latest scans show over 1,000 Voidwalkers gathered in the target zone, Daniel reported, checking his instruments, possibly more hidden from our sensors. And they haven't detected us yet? Eleanor asked. We're approaching using the gravitic shadow of the system's gas giant, Lisa explained. They won't sense us until we enter the nesting region. Dr. Nichols, check the equipment one final time. Remember, everyone needs to focus on their strongest emotional memories. Joy, fear, love. Whatever creates the most intense neural response for you personally. The volunteers took their positions in concentric circles around the central broadcasting array. Eleanor found her place in the innermost ring, alongside Daniel, Lisa, Rodriguez, Olivia, and Dr. Nichols. Final approach, the pilot announced over the communication system. Entering the nesting region in 3 minutes. Eleanor looked around, at the determined faces of her fellow humans. Whatever happens today, we protect not just Earth, but all thinking beings in this galaxy. I'm proud to stand with each of you. The ship decelerated, emerging from the gas giant's shadow. Almost immediately, the sensors lit up with warnings. They've detected us, Daniel called out. Multiple Voidwalkers converging on our position. Through the ship's viewports, they could see the darkness gathering, not individual shadows now, but a swirling storm of black energy that seemed to absorb the light of the nearby stars. They've merged, Dr. Nichols said in awe. Thousands of individual entities forming a single consciousness. 30 seconds to optimal broadcast position, the pilot announced, the strain evident in his voice. The darkness surrounded the ship, pressing against the hull. Metal groaned and systems flickered as the Voidwalkers tested their defenses. Everyone, prepare to activate on my mark, Eleanor called out. Focus on your strongest emotional memory. Make it vivid, make it real in your mind. The ship shuddered violently. Warning alarms blared throughout the vessel. Hull breach on deck 3, someone called out. Emergency containment holding. Now, Eleanor shouted. 123. Humans closed their eyes and focused. Eleanor thought of Earth. The blue sky over Montana where she grew up. The feeling of wind on her face. Her father's proud smile when she graduated from the academy. The broadcasting array hummed to life, channeling the combined neural patterns of the human volunteers. Light pulsed from the device, first blue, then white, growing in intensity until it was almost painful to look at. It's working, Daniel shouted over the growing noise. The field is expanding. Through the viewports, they could see the darkness, writhing, pulling back from the ship as the neural energy field pushed outward. The merged Voidwalker entity separated into smaller forms, then individual shadows, recoiling from the human broadcast. Containment field at 40% capacity, Dr. Nichols reported, monitoring the equipment. 60%, 80%. The ship rocked violently again as the Voidwalkers made a desperate final assault. Systems failed across multiple decks. The lights flickered, then stabilized. Hold your focus, Eleanor called out. We're almost there. The neural energy field continued to expand, pushing the Voidwalkers back toward the center of the nesting region. As the field reached full strength, it created a perfect sphere of light around the entire area. Containment field at 100%, Dr. Nichols announced. Stabilizing, field is stable. The humans opened their eyes to see their success. Outside the viewports, a shimmering barrier of energy surrounded the nesting region. Within it, the Voidwalkers swirled in angry patterns, unable to approach the edge of the field. The permanent broadcasting stations are online, Daniel reported. They'll maintain the field even after we leave. A cheer went up among the volunteers. They had done it, created a permanent containment zone that would hold the Voidwalkers in their nesting ground, preventing them from ever again preying on the galaxy's sentient beings. 3 days later, Eleanor stood with Ambassadors Kilax in the Federation Council chamber. The surviving council members had returned, and the chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of worlds. Today marks a new beginning for the Federation, the ambassador announced. Thanks to our human allies, the Voidwalker threat has been contained, not through destruction, but through understanding and innovation. Eleanor stepped forward to address the assembly. We came to you as newcomers, seeking friendship and knowledge. We found instead a shared challenge and a chance to prove our worth. Earth is honored to stand as a full member of the Federation. As the chamber erupted in applause, Ambassadors Kilax turned to Eleanor. For millennia, we believed that advanced technology and logical order were the pinnacle of evolution, the ambassador said quietly. Your species has taught us that there is power in emotion, in unpredictability, in the very chaos we once dismissed as primitive. Eleanor smiled. Perhaps that's why we were able to help, because we see things differently than you do. The universe's most dangerous creatures will never again threaten our peoples, Skillax said. And it's all because they can't stand to be near you humans. I'll take that as a compliment, Eleanor replied with a laugh. As they looked out at the assembled representatives of 100 worlds, Eleanor thought about the strange journey that had brought humanity to this moment. They had traveled to the stars hoping to find friends and allies. Instead, they had found a galaxy in need of the very qualities that made humans unique. Their emotional complexity, their unpredictable nature, their willingness to face the darkness without flinching. The universe's most dangerous predators couldn't stand to be near humans, and because of that, the galaxy could now stand together in peace. Commander Vextal moved slowly through the dimly lit corridor of the Zenthari science vessel Celestial Seeker. His once bright blue scales had lost their shine, now dull and flaking from lack of proper nutrition. The ship's emergency lighting cast long shadows as he made his way to the central chamber where the remaining crew waited. 3 cycles. It had been 3 full cycles since their engines failed and left them drifting in this empty region of space. 3 cycles of sending desperate signals into the void. 3 cycles of silence. Vextal paused at the entrance to the central chamber. Inside, 12 Zenthari sat or lay on the floor. Just 12 survivors from the original crew of 30. The others had either died in the initial explosion or succumbed to injuries in the days that followed. They had gathered here to conserve the last reserves of heat and oxygen as the ship's systems shut down one by one. Commander, said Science Officer Nixara, her voice weak. How much longer? Vextal didn't need to check the life support readings again. He knew the numbers by heart. 20 hours, perhaps less. No one spoke. They had already said their goodbyes, recorded their final messages, and made peace with their fate. The Zenthari were a proud species, and these were some of their finest, scientific minds. They would face death with dignity. Vextal settled next to the ship's Dr. Krell, who was tending to a young technician with a fever. How is she? Stable for now, Krell replied. The medicine is gone. All I can do is make her comfortable. The commander nodded and closed his inner eyelids briefly in a gesture of respect. They had known from the beginning that rescue was unlikely. Their mission had taken them far from established trade routes, and the recent border conflicts with the Krax Imperium meant that the Zenthari Stellar Command deemed this quadrant too dangerous for rescue operations. They were on their own, left to die. I wish to make a final log entry, Vextal announced, rising again. The others watched him with dull eyes as he moved to the command console. The system flickered to life, drawing on emergency power. Vextal straightened his posture, determined that his final words would reflect the honor of his position. Final log of Commander Vextal, Zenthari Science Vessel Celestial Seeker. Cycle 457, Standard Galactic Calendar. Our situation remains critical. Life support will fail within the next 20 hours. No response has been received to our distress signals. The crew has performed admirably under these circumstances, upholding the highest traditions of the Zenthari scientific fleet. He paused, his four-fingered hand hovering over the console. Was there anything else to say? Any final wisdom to impart to whoever might find this vessel, perhaps years from now? I believe our mission was sabotaged, he continued, lowering his voice. The damage to our engines was too precise, too calculated to be an accident. I do not know who would want to silence our research, but I suspect it relates to the artifacts we discovered. The truth must... A sudden crackle from the communication system interrupted him. Vextal froze, his sensitive hearing ridges detecting something that hadn't been heard in days. A voice. Zenthari vessel, this is Captain Alan Miller of the Earth Alliance ship, Dauntless. We've received your distress signal. Hold tight. We're coming to get you. The central chamber erupted in confusion. Crew members who had been lying motionless moments before struggled to their feet. Nixara rushed to the communication console, pushing past Vextal. This is Science Officer Nixara of the Celestial Seeker. We read you, Earth vessel. Our situation is critical. Understood, Celestial Seeker. We're tracking your position now. ETA is 45 minutes. Can you hold out that long? Vextal stepped forward. This is Commander Vextal. Yes, Captain Miller. We can hold out. We did not expect rescue. There was a pause before the human replied. Never leave anyone behind. That's our way. Prepare your crew for emergency evacuation. Our sensors show your hull integrity is compromised in several sections. Humans, whispered Krell, standing at Vextal's side. All the way out here? Vextal shared his surprise. Humans were newcomers to interstellar travel, having achieved faster-than-light capabilities just under a century ago. According to galactic accords, they were supposed to be confined to their local sector, still under probationary status in the eyes of the Galactic Council. Yet here they were, responding to a distress call that the Zenthari's own government had ignored. Scan for the approaching vessel, Vextal ordered, and a young officer hurried to obey. Confirmed, Commander, the officer reported moments later. Earth Alliance signatures detected. They're approaching at high speed. For the first time in days, Vextal felt something other than resignation. It was a dangerous feeling. It was hope. Prepare the crew for evacuation, he ordered. Gather all research data. Essential equipment only. As the crew moved with renewed energy, Vextal pulled Nixara aside. The artifacts? Secured in my personal locker, she confirmed. The humans won't know what they are. Good. Until we know why someone tried to kill us, we must be careful with whom we share our discoveries. 42 minutes later, the Celestial Seeker shuddered as the Earth ship established a docking connection. Vextal stood at the airlock, his ceremonial cloak, now wrinkled and stained, draped over his shoulders. As the oldest surviving officer, tradition demanded he be the first to greet their rescuers. The airlock cycled open, and Vextal found himself face to face with a human. The alien was shorter than him, with pale skin and dark hair cut short. Unlike the Zenthari, humans had only 2 eyes, and this one's were a bright blue, almost matching the color Vextal's scales had once been. Commander Vextal? The human asked, extending a hand in what Vextal recognized from briefings as a greeting gesture. Captain Alan Miller, let's get your people to safety. Vextal pressed his palm against the humans in the customary response. Captain Miller, the Zenthari science fleet is in your debt. Miller smiled, revealing blunt teeth. Save the formalities for later. Your ship's core is showing signs of instability. We need to move fast. Over the next 20 minutes, the human crew efficiently evacuated the surviving Zenthari. Vextal watched with growing respect as the humans worked tirelessly, carrying those too weak to walk and treating the injured with unexpected knowledge of Zenthari physiology. As Vextal, the last to leave, stepped onto the human vessel, he turned for a final look at the Celestial Seeker. The ship had been his home for 15 years. Now it would become his tomb if not for these unexpected saviors. "We can talk when everyone's settled," Miller said, leading Vextal toward what appeared to be a medical facility. "But I have to ask, what were you doing out here so far from Zenthari space?" Vextal hesitated. The human had saved their lives, but the commander's suspicions about sabotage made him cautious. Still, they owed these humans the truth, or, at least part of it. "We were on a scientific mission," he said carefully. "Studying spatial anomalies. We found unexpected things." Miller's eyes narrowed slightly. "Unexpected enough that someone might want to stop you from returning home?" Vextal stiffened. The human was surprisingly perceptive. "Perhaps. But that is a discussion for another time, when my crew is safe." Miller nodded. "Fair enough. Welcome. Aboard the Dauntless, Commander. You're safe now." As the medical team began treating the Zenthari crew, Vextal watched the humans work, left to die in the silent emptiness of space by their own people, only to be rescued by a species many Zenthari considered primitive and unpredictable. The universe, it seemed, had a strange sense of humor. And perhaps, Vextal thought as he clutched the small container of artifacts hidden in his cloak, it also had a sense of justice. Catherine Reeves wiped sweat from her forehead as she crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel of the Zenthari vessel. The ship's design was unlike anything she had seen in her 15 years as chief engineer for the Earth Alliance. Biological, components merged with crystal technology in ways that human engineers had only theorized about. "How's it going in there, Chief?" Captain Miller's voice came through her earpiece. Catherine paused to examine a junction where several crystal-like tubes connected to what appeared to be a living membrane. "Fascinating, Captain. Their technology is, well, it's beautiful. But I'm not here to admire it." She continued moving through the tunnel, careful not to disturb anything unnecessarily. The Celestial Seeker was still on emergency power, its systems barely functioning. Her job was to assess whether the ship could be salvaged, or if they needed to retrieve any essential equipment before it failed completely. 20 minutes later, Catherine emerged from the access hatch back onto the Dauntless, her uniform stained, with blue-green fluid that served as coolant in the alien vessel. Captain Miller and First Officer Ryan Weber waited for her report. "Well?" Miller asked, his weathered face creased with concern. Catherine shook her head. "The damage is extensive, Captain. Their life support would have failed in hours just as they estimated." She pulled out her datapad and displayed a schematic of the Zenthari engine system. "But here's what's interesting. This wasn't a random failure." Weber leaned closer. "Explain." "The damage pattern is too precise," Catherine said, highlighting several points on the display. "Key junctions were targeted, components melted in a way that suggests directed energy. Someone knew exactly where to hit them to ensure they'd be stranded." Miller's expression darkened. "Sabotage?" "Without a doubt," Catherine confirmed. "And whoever did it knew Zenthari ship design intimately." The captain exchanged a glance with Weber before turning back to Catherine. "How long would repairs take?" "With the right parts? Weeks. Without them, impossible. Their propulsion system is completely fried." She hesitated. "There's something else, Captain. I found data cores that appear to have been deliberately hidden in the maintenance tunnels. They weren't part of the ship's regular systems." Miller nodded slowly. "Our guests have secrets. Keep this between us for now. I want to speak with Commander Vextal myself." In the medical bay of the Dauntless, Dr. Olivia Hayes moved from one Zenthari patient to another, checking vital signs and adjusting treatments. Her background in xenobiology made her one of the few human doctors qualified to treat alien species, but even she was learning as she went. "Their physiology is remarkable," she said to her assistant. "Look at how quickly this tissue is regenerating." The Zenthari called Krell, who had identified himself as their doctor, watched her work with four-faceted eyes that missed nothing. "You seem quite knowledgeable about our biology, Dr. Hayes." Olivia smiled. "I studied your medical journals during my training. But reading about something and actually treating patients are very different. Yet you saved Technician Mira's life. Krell observed. She would have died without your intervention. Your people are strong, Olivia replied. They survived 3 cycles with minimal life support. That's impressive. Krell moved closer, lowering his voice. May I ask why your ship was in this region? It's far from your usual territory. Olivia hesitated, aware that she wasn't authorized to discuss the Dauntless's mission. I'm sure Captain Miller will be happy to discuss that with your commander. As if summoned by her words, Miller entered the medical bay, his tall frame commanding attention immediately. Dr. Hayes, how are our guests doing? Much better, Captain. Their natural healing abilities are accelerated now that they're receiving proper nutrition and oxygen levels. Miller nodded. Good. Is Commander Vextal available to talk? I am here, Captain Miller. The Zenthari commander sat up on a nearby bed. Though still weak, he looked much better than he had when first brought aboard. His scales had begun to regain some of their natural luster. Doctor, could we have some privacy? Miller asked. Olivia nodded. Of course, he's stable enough for a conversation, but don't tire him out. After the medical staff withdrew to the other end of the bay, Miller pulled up a chair beside Vextal's bed. Commander, my chief engineer has examined your ship. She believes it was sabotaged. Vextal's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of distress in Zenthari. I suspected as much, but had no way to confirm. Do you have any idea who might have wanted to strand you out here? Or why? The Zenthari commander was silent for a long moment. Captain Miller, I owe you my life and the lives of my crew. I wish to be honest with you, but I must first ask, what was your ship doing in this region? It is far from human space. Miller considered how much to reveal. The Dauntless had been on a classified reconnaissance mission, mapping potential expansion routes beyond Earth Alliance territory. But the fact that they had found the Zenthari vessel at all was pure luck. They had detected the distress signal during a routine sensor sweep. We're explorers, Miller said finally. Earth Alliance is looking to establish new trade routes. Without Galactic Council approval? Vextal's tone held no judgment, only curiosity. Miller smiled slightly. Let's just say we prefer to ask forgiveness rather than permission. This seemed to satisfy the Zenthari. Then perhaps we have more in common than I thought. He glanced around to ensure they were not overheard. Our mission was also not entirely what our government believed it to be. Go on. Officially, we were studying spatial anomalies in this sector, but we discovered something else. Evidence of ancient technology far more advanced than anything the Council races currently possess. Vextal's voice dropped even lower. Technology that has been deliberately suppressed. Miller frowned. Suppressed by whom? The founding races of the Galactic Council. They have maintained their dominance for millennia by controlling which technologies are permitted to develop. Vextal reached beneath his medical garment and withdrew a small crystal container. This contains data that could change the power structure of the entire galaxy. Before Miller could respond, a loud alarm blared throughout the ship. The captain's communication device activated immediately. Captain, to the bridge, came Weber's urgent voice. We've got company. 3 ships just dropped out of FTL. They're broadcasting Zenthari military codes. Miller stood quickly. Reinforcements? I don't think so, sir. They're powering weapons. Vextal gripped Miller's arm with surprising strength. Captain, you must listen. If those are truly Zenthari military vessels, they are not here to rescue us. They are here to ensure no trace of our mission survives, including your ship now that you've made contact with us. Miller's eyes narrowed. You're certain? My government abandoned us to die. Why would they suddenly send rescue now, just as we've been found by humans? Vextal pressed the crystal container into Miller's hand. Whatever happens, this must not fall into their hands. The captain tucked the container into his pocket without looking at it. No one's dying today, not your crew, not mine. He activated his comm. Weber, battle stations. Tell Security Officer Jackson to get up here double time. And Dr. Hayes, prepare your patients for possible evacuation. As Miller strode from the medical bay, he felt the weight of the crystal in his pocket. Whatever secrets the Zenthari had, discovered they were worth killing for. And now those secrets were humanity's problem too. Security Officer Darius Jackson stood at his station on the bridge of the Dauntless, his dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. 3 Zenthari warships had formed a blockade position around them, their weapon systems fully powered. "They're hailing us, Captain," said Communications Officer Elena Martinez. Captain Miller straightened his uniform. On screen. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a Zenthari officer whose scales were a deeper blue than Vextal's, marked with silver patterns that indicated high rank. "Earth vessel," the Zenthari said without preamble. "This is Fleet Commander Zorax of the Zenthari Defense Force. You have interfered with a restricted operation. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded." Miller stepped forward. "Fleet Commander, this is Captain Alan Miller of the Earth Alliance vessel Dauntless. We responded to a distress signal from the science vessel Celestial Seeker. We have 12 survivors aboard receiving medical treatment." "That vessel and its crew are Zenthari property," Zorax replied coldly. "Their mission was classified. By aiding them, you have violated multiple sections of the Galactic Accords." First Officer Ryan Weber leaned close to Miller. "Sir, they're moving into attack positions." Miller nodded slightly, then addressed the Zenthari commander again. "We acted according to the Universal Distress Protocol, which supersedes national boundaries. These people were dying. And now you will die with them if you do not comply," Zorax said. "You have 5 minutes to power down and prepare for boarding." The transmission cut off abruptly. "Options?" Miller asked, looking around at his bridge crew. Darius stepped forward. "Their ships outgun us 3-1, Captain. In a direct fight, we don't stand a chance." "Can we outrun them?" Miller asked. Catherine Reeves, who had rushed to the bridge from engineering, shook her head. "Not all 3, maybe 1, but their ships are designed for pursuit." "Could we use the Celestial Seeker as a distraction?" Weber suggested. Miller considered this. "Possibly. But I'm not risking the lives of 12 people we just saved." He turned to Catherine. "What about the sensor? Ghost protocol we were testing?" Her eyes widened. "It's experimental, sir. We've only used it in simulations." "Theory into practice, Chief." "Make it happen." Miller activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." In the medical bay, Dr. Hayes worked quickly to secure her patients. "We need to move everyone to the inner chambers," she told her team. "If they start shooting, the outer hull could be compromised." Commander Vextal struggled to sit up. "Dr. Hayes, let me speak to my government. Perhaps I can reason with them." Olivia gently pushed him back. "Captain Miller is handling the situation. Your job is to stay alive after everything we've done to save you." Krell, the Zenthari doctor, moved between beds helping the human medical team. "Zorax is not known for his reason," he said quietly. "He is a military hardliner, loyal to the Council above all else." "The Council?" Olivia asked, helping a weak Zenthari female onto a transport gurney. "The Galactic Council," Krell explained. "The political body that governs interstellar relations. Your species has limited interaction with them." "For good reason, it seems," Olivia muttered. Back on the bridge, Catherine worked frantically at the engineering station. "Sensor ghost protocol ready, Captain, but it will only give us a few minutes of confusion at best." "That might be enough," Miller said. "Helm, plot a course through the asteroid field at Mark 227. On my signal, engage." "At full speed?" "Sir, that's dangerously close to the gravity well of the gas giant," the helm officer protested. "Exactly why they won't expect it." Miller turned to Darius. "Prepare a spread of sensor buoys. Program them to mimic our engine signature." Darius nodded, understanding the plan. "Ready, sir." Miller checked the time. 1 minute until their deadline. He took a deep breath. "Now, people, execute." The Dauntless surged forward suddenly, its engines pushing to maximum thrust. At the same time, Catherine activated the sensor ghost protocol, creating multiple false readings of the ship on enemy scanners. "They're firing," Weber shouted as energy beams lanced out from the Zenthari vessels. The ship rocked as one blast grazed their shields. "Damage report," Miller demanded. "Shields holding at 82%, Catherine replied. "The Ghost Protocol is working. They're firing at multiple locations." Darius released the sensor buoys, which scattered in different directions, each broadcasting a signal identical to the Dauntless's engine signature. "Entering the asteroid field now," the helm officer announced, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. The view screen showed massive chunks of rock spinning slowly in the darkness. The Dauntless weaved between them, using the natural cover to break sensor lock. "The Zenthari ships are in pursuit," Darius reported, "but they're splitting up to chase the buoys." Miller allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Maintain course toward the gas giant. We'll use its radiation belt to mask our signature while we plot a jump out of the system." In the medical bay, the wounded Zenthari felt the ship's sharp maneuvers. Science Officer Nixara approached Dr. Hayes. "Your captain seems to be executing an escape rather than surrendering," she observed. "Captain Miller doesn't abandon people he's rescued," Olivia replied, steadying a tray of medical supplies. "It's not our way." Nixara's four-faceted eyes blinked, in what might have been surprise. "Even when facing superior forces? Even for aliens?" "Especially then," Olivia said firmly. "That's humanity for you." The ship lurched again as another blast hit the shields. "One of the warships has seen through our deception," Darius reported on the bridge. "They're on our tail and closing." Miller gripped the arms of his command chair. "Distance to the radiation belt?" 30 seconds, sir," the helm officer replied. "Divert power from non-essential systems to the engines," Miller ordered, "and prepare to release the emergency plasma vents on my mark." Catherine looked up sharply. "Sir, that will leave us without reserve power for at least 10 minutes. "Better than being captured," Miller replied grimly. "Stand by. Now." The Dauntless released a massive cloud of superheated plasma from its engine vents just as it entered the radiation belt of the gas giant. The pursuing Zenthari warship plunged into the plasma cloud, its sensors momentarily blinded. "We've lost them," Weber exclaimed, checking the tactical display. "The radiation belt is masking our position, and the plasma cloud disrupted their tracking systems." Miller didn't relax yet. "Maintain course through the belt. Once we reach the far side, plot a jump to the nearest Earth Alliance outpost." "That would be Outpost 7, sir," Elena said. 7 hours at maximum FTL. "Make it so," Miller confirmed. "And someone get down to medical and check on our guests. I want to make sure they're all right after that roller coaster ride." Darius volunteered, leaving his station to a junior officer. As the security chief made his way through the ship's corridors, he couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The Zenthari government had left their own people to die, then tried to kill them, and now the humans too, when they were rescued. Whatever Commander Vextal had discovered, it was significant enough to kill for, and now Earth was involved. When Darius entered the medical bay, he found Dr. Hayes and her team stabilizing patients who had been jostled during the escape. Commander Vextal sat on the edge of his bed looking remarkably composed despite the situation. "Officer Jackson," Vextal greeted him. "Your captain is quite skilled." "He's gotten us out of tight spots before," Darius replied cautiously. Vextal's inner eyelids flickered. "But perhaps not with the Zenthari military in pursuit. This situation is unprecedented." "Why are your people so determined to silence you?" Darius asked bluntly. The Zenthari commander glanced around at his crew before answering. "Because what we discovered threatens the foundation of galactic politics. And now, by helping us, your people are involved too." "Involved in what exactly?" "A truth that has been hidden for 20,000 years," Vextal said softly. "One that will change everything, especially for species like yours." Commander Jack Wilson had not expected to find himself at remote Earth Alliance Outpost 7 examining alien artifacts. Yet here he was. The military intelligence officer leaned forward, studying the crystal container that Captain Miller had placed on the conference room table. "And you're certain this information is authentic?" Wilson asked, looking at Vextal. The Zenthari commander, now recovered enough to attend the meeting, nodded. "My team verified the data multiple times. What you see there is genuine." 7 hours after their escape from the Zenthari warships, the Dauntless had reached Outpost 7, a small research station orbiting a distant moon. Commander Wilson had arrived shortly after, sent by Earth Alliance intelligence to assess the situation. Captain Miller activated the device. A holographic display appeared above the table, showing complex schematics for what appeared to be an advanced propulsion system. "This is just one piece," Vextal explained. "We discovered dozens of similar artifacts at an abandoned site. The technology is far beyond anything currently in use even by the eldest council races." Catherine Reeves studied the schematics with growing excitement. "This drive system would be at least 3 times more efficient than our current FTL technology. The power requirements alone are revolutionary." Wilson's expression remained guarded. "And you believe the Galactic Council has been suppressing this technology?" "Not just this," Vextal said. "All advanced technology. The 3 founding races, the Altorans, Viridians, and Mox Collective, have maintained their dominance for over 20,000 years by ensuring no other species advances too quickly." Darius Jackson, who had been observing quietly, finally spoke. "Why didn't your government want this information made public? Surely it would benefit your people." Vextal's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of discomfort. "The Zenthari joined the Council 5 centuries ago. We've enjoyed the privileges that come with membership. My mission was inconvenient for those who prefer the status quo." "So they left you to die," Miller said flatly. "And when that failed, they tried to eliminate all evidence," Vextal confirmed. "Including your ship and crew." Wilson rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "The implications are enormous. If what you're saying is true, the Council has been running what amounts to a technological apartheid system for millennia." "That is an accurate assessment," Vextal agreed. The room fell silent as the humans processed this information. Finally, Dr. Hayes, who had joined them after settling her patients in the outpost's medical facility, asked the question on everyone's mind. "What do we do with this information?" Wilson sighed heavily. "The Earth Alliance isn't ready for open conflict with the Galactic Council. If we publicly accuse them of this conspiracy, we'll be dismissed as primitive troublemakers, or worse." "So, we do nothing?" Catherine asked incredulously. "Let them continue to hold back progress?" "I didn't say that," Wilson replied with a slight smile. "I said we can't go public, but there are other options." Miller leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Commander?" "The Zenthari aren't the only species chafing under Council restrictions," Wilson explained. "Earth intelligence has monitored communications suggesting discontent among at least a dozen mid-tier civilizations." Vextal's inner eyelids flickered with interest. "You propose an alliance?" "Not an official one. That would violate too many treaties, but an understanding perhaps. A sharing of information and resources outside official channels." Dr. Hayes nodded slowly. "A technological resistance movement." "Exactly," Wilson confirmed. "We start small, medical technologies, agricultural improvements, things that could be explained as natural development." Darius, ever practical, raised a concern. "The Council will suspect cooperation if multiple species begin advancing simultaneously." "Not if we're careful," Catherine countered. "We implement changes gradually, starting with technologies that are next in the natural development cycle for each species." Miller turned to Vextal. "Would other Zenthari support this approach? Those who aren't loyal to the Council?" "There are many who question our subservience," Vextal said. "Scientists primarily, but also some in the military who resent Council restrictions on our defensive capabilities." "And other species?" Wilson asked. "The Fraxians have long resented Council interference," Vextal suggested, "as have the Nor Collective and the Taigani Republic. All have skilled scientists who would understand the value of what we offer." Miller stood and paced the room. This would require unprecedented cooperation between species that have historically been competitors or even enemies. Yes, Vextal agreed. The Council maintains power through isolation, keeping species suspicious of one another. Your human approach of extending help even to supposed competitors is revolutionary in its own way. Wilson opened a secure data terminal. I need to contact Earth Alliance Command. This decision goes beyond our authority, but I'll recommend proceeding with caution. As Wilson stepped out to make his call, Miller turned to the others. Whether Command approves or not, we're already involved. The Zenthari military knows we have Vextal and his crew. They know we have the artifacts. We could still turn them over? Darius suggested, playing devil's advocate. Avoid the conflict entirely. The room fell silent again. All eyes turned to Miller, whose weathered face hardened with resolve. No, he said firmly. We don't abandon people we've saved, and we don't surrender knowledge that could benefit billions across the galaxy simply because some ancient powers want to keep their advantage. Dr. Hayes smiled. That sounds like the official start of a resistance movement to me. A very human decision, Vextal observed, his tone suggesting approval. Catherine began examining the schematics more closely. If we're really doing this, I should start analyzing how these technologies could be adapted to different species' existing systems. The door slid open, and Wilson returned. His expression was grim but determined. Command is cautiously supportive, he announced. They're sending additional personnel and resources to help establish secure communication protocols with potential allies. So we're really doing this, Darius said, not quite a question. We are, Wilson confirmed. Command is calling it Operation Dawn. Appropriate, Vextal commented. A new day for many species long kept in the dark. Miller looked around at this unlikely group. Humans and Zenthari, scientists and soldiers, now united in a cause larger than any of them had anticipated. When the Dauntless first detected a faint distress signal, we should begin by establishing contact with trustworthy members of the species Vextal mentioned, Miller suggested. Carefully, through existing trade channels or scientific exchanges. I can provide names, Vextal offered. Scientists who have expressed frustration with Council restrictions in the past. Good, Wilson said, and we'll need to create a system for sharing information that can't be traced back to Earth or to your crew. As they continued planning, Miller stepped aside with Dr. Hayes. How are the other Zenthari crew members doing? Recovering well, she replied. Most are scientists like Vextal. They seem eager to continue their work, now that they know they're, not alone. Miller nodded thoughtfully. They came very close to dying alone in space. Instead, they've sparked what might become the most significant change in galactic politics in 20,000 years. All because you decided to answer a distress call from an unknown ship, Olivia said with a smile. It's what humans do, Miller replied simply. We help. Across the room, Vextal watched the humans discussing, planning, working together with an energy and purpose that was rare among older species. The Zenthari commander felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Hope for a future not controlled by the ancient powers that had kept so many in subservience for so long. The revolution would begin quietly, with whispered conversations and shared knowledge. But it had begun, and humanity, the newcomers to galactic society, had struck the first spark. 5 years had passed since the rescue of the Celestial Seeker. Elena Martinez stood at the observation window of Harmony Station, watching as ships from 27 different species docked in the massive hangar bay. Once a junior communications officer aboard the Dauntless, she now served as the human liaison to the Alliance's central coordination hub, hidden within an asteroid field in neutral space. Quite a change from when this was just a mining facility, said a familiar voice. Behind her, Elena turned to see Admiral Alan Miller, his hair now streaked with gray but his eyes still sharp and determined. Though he had been promoted years ago, she still thought of him as the captain who had answered a desperate distress call and changed the course of galactic history. Hard to believe it's only been 5 years, she replied. Sometimes it feels like decades. Miller joined her at the window. Any word from our Fraxian contacts? Their delegation arrived an hour ago, Elena confirmed. Dr. Reeves is already working with their engineers on implementing the medical regeneration technology. The station hummed with activity, as scientists and engineers from previously hostile species worked side by side. In one lab below the observation deck, Synthari and Fraxian researchers, species that had fought 3 border wars in the last century, collaborated on a project to extend food production capabilities that would benefit both their worlds. The Bay Council is getting suspicious, Miller said quietly. Their observers have noted the coincidental technological advancements across multiple worlds. Elena nodded. Our intelligence suggests the Alturan delegate has proposed increased restrictions on interspecies cooperation. Then we're running out of time, Miller replied, his face grim. Vextal approached them, now wearing the insignia of the Alliance rather than his former Zenthari rank. The past 5 years had changed him too. His blue scales had deepened in color, marked now with silver patterns that reflected his status among his people. Admiral Elena, he greeted them. I've received word from our operative in the Council. The rumors are true. The Council has scheduled an emergency session to discuss what they're calling unauthorized technological proliferation. Miller sighed. So they know. They suspect, but they have no proof of coordination, Vextal clarified. However, they are proposing to establish monitoring stations in the territories of all member species. Spies, in other words, Elena said. Precisely. Miller turned to look out at the gathered ships again. We always knew this day would come. The question is, are we ready? Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Nixara, who had become the Zenthari representative to the Alliance leadership. Admiral, the Council meeting is about to begin. Everyone is assembled. The 4 of them made their way to the central chamber of Harmony Station. Inside, representatives from all 27 species of the Shadow Alliance sat around a large circular table. Some appeared in person, others as holographic projections from distant worlds. Miller took his place at the table. Though not officially, the leader, the Alliance had no single leader by design. He was respected as the human who had helped start it all. Friends, he began, his voice carrying across the chamber. For 5 years we have worked in secret, sharing knowledge that was kept from us for millennia. We've improved medicine, food production, energy systems, all without drawing too much attention. He paused, looking around the table. But that time is ending. The Council has noticed our progress and is moving to stop it. We must decide now. Do we continue in the shadows, risking discovery and punishment, or do we step forward and challenge the old order directly? The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives argued for caution, others for bold action. The debate continued for hours, with each species weighing the risks to their people. Catherine, Reeves, now Chief Science Officer of the Alliance, finally stood to speak. The technologies we've recovered and developed together have given us advantages the Council doesn't know about. Our ships are faster, our shields stronger. If conflict comes, we can defend ourselves. But at what cost? Asked the Noor representative, their crystalline form shimmering with concern. War benefits no one. Who said anything about war? Darius Jackson countered. He had left Earth Alliance security to become the Alliance's strategic advisor. We're talking about freedom, the right to develop without arbitrary restrictions. As the debate continued, Elena watched Miller. She could see him considering every argument, weighing every risk. Finally, he stood again and the room fell silent. I suggest a middle path, he said calmly. Not continued secrecy, which will fail eventually. Not war, which would devastate worlds, but open declaration of a new galactic alliance, one based on cooperation and shared progress rather than control. Vextal's inner eyelids flickered with interest. You propose we reveal ourselves? Yes, Miller confirmed. We invite all species to join us, including the founding council races. We make it clear that we seek partnership, not conflict. We show them that we've surpassed the need for their oversight. A bold move, Nixara observed. Humanity specializes in bold moves, Miller replied with a slight smile. It's gotten us this far. The representatives discussed the proposal intently. Gradually, a consensus emerged. They would reveal the alliance publicly and extend an open invitation to all species to join them. 3 weeks later, representatives from the alliance gathered on a neutral space station. Billions across the galaxy watched the transmission as Admiral Miller prepared to address them. People of the galaxy, he began, his voice calm and clear. For too long, artificial barriers have been placed between us, between our peoples, our technologies, our potential. Today, we choose a different path. As he spoke, ships from all Alliance species moved into formation around the station, a show of unity and strength. We extend an invitation to all species, including the founding council races, to join us in this new era, Miller continued. We have survived in the cold of space, alone, isolated, left to die. We have learned that our greatest strength comes not from hoarding knowledge, but from sharing it. In her position beside him, Elena felt pride swell in her chest. The human who had answered a distress call from a dying alien ship now stood before the galaxy, offering a new way forward. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, species that had been denied full participation in galactic affairs for centuries rallied to the Alliance's call. The Council, faced with this unified front, found its power base eroding hour by hour. Later, as Miller and Elena watched the reports of new worlds declaring for the Alliance, she asked, "Did you ever imagine it would come to this when you picked up that distress signal 5 years ago?" Miller shook his head. "I just did what any human would do. You don't leave people to die alone in the silence of space." Vextal joined them, gazing out at the stars. "Your people have a strange way of seeing the universe, Admiral. Most species look to the stars and see resources to claim, territory to control." "And what do humans see?" Elena asked. Miller smiled. "Neighbors we haven't met yet. On worlds across the galaxy, species that had once feared each other began working together openly. Technologies that had been suppressed for millennia transformed lives, bringing health and prosperity to billions. And it had all begun with a simple human principle. You don't leave people behind, even strangers, even aliens, especially not to die alone in the silence of space.